We are live. So, hello and welcome. Today it's going to be a time for another public-private coaching. And today we are going to do our public-private coaching with Neo1186. Hello.
Hi, good evening.
Good evening, Neo. And this time is going to be slightly different from our previous coaching sessions since we are having plenty of notes to discuss on. So as you can see, we are having 9 pages of PDF here. And I think that there are like questions that we can discuss the whole time for. Like this first question on raise, call, hold, shove ranges for every position in hypers. In first and maybe second blind level, often answer what is raise call versus one, what is better as a shove or min raise, what is good to open, especially from earlier positions. Like, I think that by going into this in detail would probably fill the 2 hours quite easily on like what kind of ranges we are going, how do we build the ranges for hypers, especially when hypers are in general are going to be quite quick. And even for the first 2 blind levels, like if you are thinking about first 2 blind levels in a turbo, it's generally going to be 9 to 8 handed all the time. But in hypers, it might be that, like I think my quickest 9 max hyper has been that I have been in heads up on the second blind level. And it's going to be like, there are going to be times where we are going to be 5 or 6 handed even in the second blind level. So the optimal stuff is I think it's going to differ more in hypers, and there are going to be more stuff that we'll need to talk about. But this is something that we can actually, this is also something that we can look. And this is also like in first and maybe second blind level. Like if we are talking about the first blind level and we haven't missed a lot of chips, I think that it's going to be on the first blind level, our default is going to be min raising most of our hands.
Okay.
Like, and most of our hands, I mean here that there are certain rare situations where we are having something like a small pocket pair and we are from small blind or button. I think that with small pocket pairs even cutoff might be, but like those, we are in late position, we are having a small pocket pair. Those are like the ideal situation. Might be that we are having something like ace-6 suited or some weak suited ace or small pocket pairs, we might think about shoving. But when we are going to think about shoving or min raising more is going to be on the second blind level, when there are going to be a lot of different options that we are having open. Like our average stack size on the second blind level ranges from 14 to 18 big blinds. So, and hello to our chat. Thanks Janita and Deja to tell me that when the stream has gotten online. And hello to Blank One, Kauris, Nikki Penisofani, Kaleidoscope. So like we can start by looking on what you are doing right now on the first blind levels. I think that's going to be the more interesting part. I'm having some of your hands here, and I'll actually take this outside for a bit so I can see what's the buy-in level that you are having most hypers on. Okay, we can also try to filter for only hyper if it goes well. All tournament speeds, hyper turbo. Like Poker Tracker has we have speeds, turbo, super turbo, hyper turbo, ultra turbo. I don't know what's the difference between those. And even with the hyper turbo, there is like four games that are going to be problematic, but no worries. We are going to finish those off by some additional filtering. Game details. Buy-ins, buy-in between. 1 and higher because it took some lower level. Sorry about this. Buy-in between 1 and let's say 100. Okay, now we should have, based on buy-ins, we should have only hypers here. And okay. So we are having here a position report. This is pretty basic report. And pretty basic report on hypers. We don't see yet anything that interesting, but let's add a filter here and filter for the first tournament blinds and antes. So let's see the first blind level. So the big blind is equal to 20. Which country Neo is representing?
Germany.
Germany.
Yes.
And Calleon said that in the first blind level, shoving any ace-x outside of small blind is probably not good. I think that there are spots that something like ace-6 to ace-8 suited might make sense shoving from button, but I think that Calleon is correct that on the first blind level, we usually do want to at the first blind levels, we usually want to only think about small blind as a shove, and even on small blind, usually there are going to be better equity options. So what I'm wanting to see here is to see very few open shoves, and this is also interesting to see like complete 100% attempts to steal. To give some background info, we were thinking about doing this session as a session where we would look at some real-life gameplay. And I was worried with Neo that when I saw a few moments of that gameplay, that he's going to talk himself out of doing profitable stuff by looking at really small sample sizes and then talking himself out of races. But we can see in here that if you are doing -5 big blinds per 100 in 9 max on small blind, you are doing pretty damn well. Like, pretty damn well.
Okay, I never noticed.
But we can see in here that there are like open shoves. There are very few open shoves. The small race ranges, like we are only having 300 hands, so we don't have that easy of a statistics. Let's see, let's mock up a bit with poker style. Like what's going to be our UTG opening range then? If we are thinking about that we are on average, we are opening somewhere around 7%. Something like this, probably.
From UTG, I think I opened down to pocket 5s.
Okay. So you are opening less suited aces then, I think.
Yes, I think I open ace-10 suited as the last suited ace, and I don't open ace-jack off.
Yeah, but this is going to be a solid range. I think that there are going to be some profitable hands that we can add even from early position. Like even these suited hands, they are going to be probably easier to play than something like pocket fives, and these are going to probably be the next hands we would open. It depends a bit on how often do we think that we are going to get flatted or 3-bet.
Yeah, in hypers, I'm not sure if I should open as much as I open in reg speed. Is this a wrong perception of mine?
Depends on the effective stack size. Like in reg speeds, you are going to get flatted more often with the same stack size. But in hypers, you are going to get played back aggressively more often. So, but I'm thinking that if I'm looking at your UTG ranges, these are going to be really solid ranges. And this is like probably your UTG +2 range or UTG +1 range. And I think that it's going to be really solid. And something like these 3-bets, we can see that there's like 7.7% of 3-bet. And if in real life you would be 3-betting UTG with 7.7%, it would make absolutely no sense since people are opening quite tightly their UTGs. But we know that this is going to be variance. When we are having such a small sample of hands, we are mainly looking on BPIP and PFR, and we are looking on stuff that we are getting. We are looking on stuff where we are getting a lot of samples for our time. And for Calleon, we are having like 3,000 hands, but for a certain position, we are only having about 300 hands. But if we are seeing that out of 384 hands, someone has opened like any hand, it's going to be that we can deduce that the guy is pretty aggressive from small blind. And something like from hijack we could open probably more.
Yes, it was one of the questions in the PDF, suggestions for a hijack range.
Yeah, I think that perhaps depends on what you are experiencing on your, like, if you are experiencing that you are going to get a lot of chips and you are going to get a lot of pots down, then stealing this much at the early levels is going to be fine. I'm thinking that you are probably going to be on the upper end, even on the button. I generally like to be aggressive on the button and small blind as well. I'm just thinking that there might be something to look into, like how often you are getting played back at. If this is mostly low stakes, then going for 60% is going to be probably quite fine, but the higher the stakes are going to be, the more we are going to see players playing back at us. So when we are going to 15s, I think that, or when we are thinking about 7s and 15s, we probably want to tone this aggression down from small blind and button a bit, and tone it up a bit more on hijack.
Okay.
Like, I think that we can go for pretty much any pocket pair and any suited ace type of hands, and going for I think even any offsuit ace is going to be fine. Like, this is probably going to be, depends on how often you are going to get played back at, but we can have we can add some of these hands for your general hijack opening range.
Is this also for reg speed, or is this?
This is like we are now looking at hypers because this is your first question.
Okay.
And actually reg speeds are going to be quite similar, but there's like I think that with reg speeds, it's probably going to be even better to open widely since opponents are going to be worse on average. So we can be even a bit more wild in reg speeds.
Okay. What do you think about suited connectors in this range?
It depends. Like we want to add some, or like the more possibilities we are having that we are going to get flatted by multiple opponents. Like if we are thinking about something like 7-6 suited, it's what we are average, what we are having is going to be that we are almost never having a top pair, and the average strength of our hand is going to be quite weak. So I don't like, and when we are talking about hypers, I don't like the suited connectors as much since we are always having less hands to play with. Like when we are talking about hypers, the effective stack size are only going to be somewhere around 25 big blinds starting up, and if we are thinking about the anti-adjusted big blinds, it's like 18, 20 most of the time, even at early on. So when we don't have a lot of stack to pot ratio to play with, then something like suited connectors going down with those doesn't make that much sense since those are going to be hands that are going to gain in value the more chips we are going to have behind.
Okay.
But this is something to like. I like the early ranges. We can be a bit more aggressive from early on, and from late positions. Like I think on cutoff we are going to be quite fine, and on button and small blind we might even think about going a bit tighter. And it's going to be interesting to see that you are open shoving 20%. Of course, it's like 8 hands out of 39, so. But it's still going to be like, what kind of hands are you open shoving from the small blind?
Suited aces, offsuit aces, depends, I think, on opponent. Small pocket pairs for sure. And maybe some Broadway stuff that's not good enough to induce, but too good for a race for it.
I'm thinking that in these cases it's probably going to be easier to be a bit too wide in shoving than being too tight. Like even with the ace-x type of hands, it's usually going to be okay. And Kaleon posted here on our chat that suited connectors have less value as implied odds are so much weaker and there's less possibility to semi-bluff multiple streets. And actually one thing to ask about our chat, I'm testing out some new streaming settings, so please give me comments on how does the stream quality look like. And this stream should now be on Twitch. It should be a bit more friendly for people with weak internet connections. So that's why I'm so interested in quality. So if you can chime in on our chat on what kind of stream quality you are experiencing, it would be great. But okay. Are we still here?
Yes.
So then let's see what's happening on the next blind level. Actually, I'm going to be a bit sneaky here. I'm going to go for the third blind level as standard, because I'm getting a bit worried that when you are asking only the first two blind levels, that you might be going for only open shoves later on. And yeah, when we are having the 40-20, I think that there are still going to be options to be more balanced with the small races here.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks for Kaleon and Danita to commenting. Good evening to Eki as well. But I think that most people that are not familiar with hypers, they are doing their mistakes in starting to shove too early on. Like if we are looking at MTT guys, they are like shoving pretty much a standard when we are having like 15 big blinds or less. But I think that there is still going to be good opportunities. And when I'm looking at this, I'm thinking that there are probably a lot of spots that we can, like it's going to be hard to make a mistake by open shoving too widely on the small blind.
Mm-hmm.
And if Kauris says that he doesn't see anything different, that's great. That's great for us if you don't see anything different. Interesting in a way that your raise bursts are dropping when we are going up in blinds.
Mm-hmm.
That's only interesting, but that's something that you didn't ask for. But what I commented on is the point that we are not going to go for only shoves, even at the fourth.
Okay.
No, not fourth, third blind level. Okay, we are mainly min raising still. Not a lot of difference between min raising and open shoving. Probably we can see that there are some ranges that we are open shoving rather than small raising at early positions. This is pretty much what I'm expecting. Probably what I'm not expecting is the even divide with open shoves and small raises on small blind. I'm thinking that when people are in general, they are folding too much and defending too little of their big blinds, I usually think that min raising is going to be a better option in most of the cases.
Mm-hmm.
And this is also going to be the part that we can also think about at late positions. We can think about limping as well. Limping as well, since it will make it a bit harder for our opponent to play back at us. Like if we are min raising, it's going to be quite an easy decision for our opponents to shove back at us. Like to do a re-steal shove doesn't require that much thought when the stack sizes are effectively they are going to be so low. But if we are limping, we are making the situation quite nasty for the other guy, since the risk to reward ratio is going to be way worse for our opponent.
Okay.
But this is something to, like, if I'm looking at just like from stats, I'm thinking that you have quite a good grasp on, and this is something that in a way I'm liking to do it like on, I'm liking to do something that we are having actionable stuff on. But if we want to go through, like we have done the first question and it's not even complete, but we have done just first question. It's only half an hour has been going on. So I would think that in general you are doing quite a good job. Oh, thanks Errol UH on the Twitch chat. Thanks for the comments. And Kaleon said that at least if limping range is balanced, like I don't think that our limping range needs to be that balanced. Like it depends a lot on how our opponents are playing back at us. It's like it's a tool to play some hands that we can't play at opponents that are 3-betting really aggressively. Okay. Is Neo still here?
Yes, I'm here.
That's going to be great. And we can see that there are some limps on the small blind, and that's going to be fine. No limps on the button line. I think those are going to be mainly the positions we want to be limping, or where we can gain something by limping.
From button as well.
There are some spots that we can gain. Like with button, it's going to be less bad for us in the, whereas if everything goes check, we are having position then, so it's also going to be a spot where we can manipulate the risk to reward ratio of our opponents. But in general, I'd say that when I'm looking at this, it's going to be something that you are probably going on early positions. Like there are small raises and open shoves. Okay, like raise firsts are going to be they actually look quite okay. So I wouldn't actually worry too much on these. And interesting to see that raise firsts are on this button are still rising from the first to second blind level. And on the third blind level, they are going down a lot, where you are going to only open shoves. But that's also something that the more we are open shoving, the less we can exploit if our opponents are folding too much.
Okay.
And it's like on the first blind level, you are like practically never folding to steals on when opponents are doing a small raise steal. But on the second blind level, you are folding like 30% more on the small raise steals. So at least against you, if we are thinking about it, the small raise steals are going to be something like you should be thinking about even on the second blind level. Like I don't think that there should be I don't know how to say it in English the best way, but there shouldn't be so sharp strategy changes. There should be some strategy changes, but I think the strategy for the first two levels is going to be quite close, and the second and third are going to be more close than first and second blind level.
Okay.
And if you like that we are going to something more in detail, and that's like what's better as shove or min raise. That's also something like the basic theory is what you already know, and we have like I think on the last session we did do quite a bit on what's going to be like the basic theory of having a polarized min raising range and then shoving pretty much the middle part of that range. Like the hands that are going to be too good to be raise folding and too weak to be raise calling, but are playing really well when we are seeing 5 cards. So, but I think we have now I think we have done what we can for the first question.
Yep.
EP raiser and mid position to late position caller.
Yeah.
Basically, every time I have a raiser plus caller in front of me, I have queens to nines, ace 10 suited, ace jack off, maybe other stuff. I'm never sure how to play this correctly. Caller 3-bet. What about opponent stats? What sizing to use when 3-betting? Like when I'm in or out of position, what to do post flop is someone calls and I have like pocket jacks and flop is ace xx. And what if I get 4-bet shove? What to do with top range hands like ace king off, ace king suited, pocket queens and pocket jacks?
Yeah. I try to make it short and simple.
Yeah. I think that we'll need to divide it up a bit.
Okay.
like if we are thinking about something like pocket jacks or pocket queens, I'm thinking that it depends on the, and this is like what are the effective stacks that if we are thinking on hyper still, I don't see a situation where we wouldn't want to, like pocket tens and up. If early position opens and someone calls from a middle position, I pretty much can't see a situation where actually from nines to queens, I think that we can shove with pretty and still feel pretty good about it.
Yeah, I agree.
But if we are thinking about something like we are having like 35 big blinds, then it's going to be way different. And sometimes we want to be taking more of a set mining line, especially if the first opponent to raise is a tight opponent. Like his range is going to be the more interesting part. Like in general, I think that regs are going to be flat calling too little, and when they're flat calling, they're like it's going to be something like 20% traps and 80% medium strength hands that you don't need to care that much about that are going to fold against a sizable 3-bet. And something like if we are thinking about like the hyper stacks as that we are like on the first blind level, something like suited aces are like the weakest of the suited aces, like ace queen suited to ace 10 suited. I think that we are playing them best if we are flat calling those a lot. Like something like ace king suited is, on the other hand, it's going to be too good to not be 3-betting. But there we are having like ace king suited, pocket kings, pocket aces. We are having more leeway in what kind of a sizing do we want to use. Like with the pocket pairs, we are almost always, when there's a raiser and caller, the medium to medium high pocket pairs we want to be shoving. But it's like the offsuit aces, it's going to be hard as well. I think that with something like ace jack off, we mostly want to be folding. It doesn't play well enough against the first player to raise. It's not going to be profitable to 3-bet, and in general, it's not going to be profitable to flat call, since we are not having a lot of flops that we can play aggressively in that kind of situation.
Okay.
Something like ace queen, ace king, if we are ace king and ace queen and ace king off, like ace king off, we are having option, do we want to 3-bet or do we want to call? But in general, I think that ace queen, ace king are playing better as flat calls most of the time.
Okay.
Like with ace queen, ace king, we can play a bit more aggressively if we are hitting the ace or a queen. But with something like jack, it's going to be harder, and ace jack is going to be like we are not having a lot of weaker hands in the general EP opening range.
Okay.
Whoa, Kaleon did like how much do you small 3-bets in hypers in general? I don't think that there are a lot of space in using small 3-bets outside of the first blind level, and like situations where we are like doubled up and it's second or third blind level. But it's going to be an interesting spot because people are going to give a lot of respect to small 3-bets in hypers. So we are going to have some interesting spots where we can add some more 3-bets or add 3-bet with a wider range when we are 3-betting small, to be 3-betting as a bluff as well. But it's like, in a way, it's sensible for opponents to play really tight against 3-bets, since most of the players, when they are 3-betting small, the range is going to be really, really strong. But also, as people are going to give a lot of credit to a small 3-bet, it's going to be harder to get value out of it. So it's like when most of the players are playing, I think that they are not playing the small 3-bets. And something like ace king suited, ace king suited, kings and aces, or something that like when it's a 3-way pot, then if we are doing a small 3-bet, we want to do it with the strongest hands that we are going to have a really strong situation with mainly, since in a 3-way pot we are going to be, and in a 3-way pot also depends a bit, like if we are having like 30 to 40 big blinds and we understand that when we are having regs with us, they are not flat calling that much. So when we are having regs in general, when we are having this kind of situation where we have a raiser and a caller, the caller is usually going to be a random player or a more fishy player. So when we are having more chips and we are having larger stack to pot ratio, sometimes it makes also sense, even though the EP is having a tight range, but sometimes it also makes sense to be thinking about that, can we isolate ourselves? But usually with the smaller stack size, we want to flat call our hands, since we don't want to be folding against 4-bets that much, and we want to, like if we are having a 3-way pot, it's going to be okay, and then we are just going to have hands that are playing well in 3-way pots in our flatting range.
Okay.
And sorry, these questions are, I'm just trying to think about the question, then I'm going to think about like what kind of a, this is something that it's usually easier to discuss about a certain hand or a certain situation than when it's going to be this abstract. It's hard to do concrete stuff.
Okay.
And what to do post flop if someone calls and I have like pocket jacks and flop is ace jack, ace xx, etc. And if I get 4-bet shoved, what to do with top range hands like ace king of ace king suited. What sizing to use when 3-betting?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think I use 3 times the open raise and add one blind per caller or something like that is the rule. I think it could be smaller, I think, when the blinds go up.
Yeah, and I think that when we are in position, that's going to be probably a bit bigger than we want to. Like I think 2.5 times the open is going to be better.
Okay.
It's going to be a better sizing in position, and out of position 3 times. Three times sounds really good. Depends on the caller. Like when we are having a caller, I think that we can add more than just 1 BB, because usually the caller is also adding more chips to the pot, and it's going to be all about manipulating the pot odds that we are giving our opponents. And what to do post flop if someone calls and I have like pocket jacks and flop is ace xx? It depends on what those x's are. What do we think our opponent's range to be? Like usually we are playing the hand in position. If we are playing the hand out of position with ace jack jack, and we have, or if we are playing the hand out of position with the pocket jacks, and it depends also, like if someone calls, it makes a difference if EP has called or the or MP or late position caller has called. Like if we are against EP, in general against EP is going to have such an ace heavy range when he flat calls that it's usually I wouldn't see that much value in turning our hand into a bluff. Against the MP to LP caller, well, it's going to be similar situation, but I don't see that much value. Like in the first situation, it's going to be like we are not going to get enough calls, but our hand is not going to be that valuable against our opponent. And in the second part, we don't want to turn our hand into a bluff, since we are having a lot more showdown. down equity, but then it's going to be like when against EP, if we haven't hit, we are tending to go more towards check folding with pocket jacks. Like even though pocket jacks is a great starting hand, when we are in a situation where our opponent has a way stronger range than our hand is at that point, I'm thinking that going for mostly check folds is going to be the best way to go. But when we are having the mid position to late position, I'm thinking that on those cases we are going more towards the check call. And if both players are still going to be in the pot, it's going to be mostly tending towards check fold.
And you think it's not a problem because we are the pre-flop aggressor that we don't do the c-bet that is expected from us in a way?
We don't do C, or like my philosophy with regards to C betting is that I want to do whatever makes money, and in a way, if we are C betting, then we are thinking about what kind of a range do we put our opponent on. Like everything builds on top of ranges. Like if we are thinking about, let's take the poker style here. I think that's going to be, like if we are thinking about the general opening range, I think that if we are having a reg opening from EP, it's going to be quite close to what we have had with you, about the 7 to 8%. And if we are thinking on these kind of a hands, like what kind of a hands do you just flat call against a 3-bet? Well, let's again say that we are having like, I think that with 25 big blinds, this is going to be quite clear cut if we are, but let's say that we are having 40 big blinds. Like what kind of a hands will carry on? Like the smallest pocket pairs are going to either turn into 4-bet bluffs or be folded out. I think that like we are having like 8% range here, so I think that we can fold out the weakest. Then what kind of a hands will, like this is something that in general we don't see that much aces or kings in the flatting range, but we are seeing a lot of suited aces, and I think we will fold out ace jack off as well a lot.
Okay.
But when we are thinking about the ranges, that like this is probably what we can expect, and some of these hands will be, especially these pocket pairs, because these are going to be so notoriously hard to play in a multi-way pot. Those might be shoves as well. But if we're thinking about this kind of a range, like if we are c-betting, let's say we are out of position and we are c-betting, so we don't know anything about our opponent's range. Like we can fold out so little of our opponent's range. Like if we're having 4.8%, like it's still at least 60% of our opponent's range is going to be calling. And when it's like 65% of opponent's range is going to be calling, if we are doing a half a pot c-bet, we are not making auto profit there, and I don't think that, like when we are so much in behind of our opponent, don't get our opponent to fold nearly often enough, then it's like I wouldn't care if c-bet is expected from us or not. I would try to formulate our ranges in a way that we are going to benefit from what kind of ranges do our opponents play, and like when we are c-betting, then it's like in this kind of a situation, if our opponents are having too much value hands in their range that they can get on the flop, then there is not that much space to be c-betting as a bluff. So then our c-betting range should be stronger in general in these kind of situations.
Okay.
And even if we are going like we are from our own range, even if we are going with a tighter c-betting range, it doesn't matter that much since we are not having that we are not having, and this is like we are only thinking about pocket jacks here, but we are having more value heavy range that we are c-betting with, and with the more value heavy range, then it's going to be easier to play the values that we are having.
Okay.
And Kaleon said that you can add some ace-x in the check calling range, especially in dry ace-x exports. Yeah, that's a good point as well. Like, we don't want to bet all of our aces. Like, if our opponent is calling with that kind of a, if we are betting and our opponent is calling with mostly of his aces and dropping hands that are not going to be valuable, then ourselves, if we are in here with 3-betting with something like, let's say, ace queen suited, it doesn't necessarily make that much sense into going always with a c-bet. It's valuable, and something like ace jack suited, it makes a lot more sense to be strengthening our check calling range instead.
Okay.
Excellent point by Kaleon here. We have 9 pages, and we have like gone from, we have gone 6 rows outside of in the first, and we are approaching our first break.
This small blind question is maybe not so important. We can maybe skip that.
Yeah, I'd say that you are doing really, really well on your small blind. And small blind in general, it's going to be a hard spot to be flat calling there, since we are giving big blind great odds to take part in the hand. We are going to have the worst position of all on the tables. So, like, on small blind, I think that the most profitable way is to be to mainly be defending it with re-steals. And when we want to defend it, we generally want to focus on the type of hands that are playing well in 3-way pots. So we want to be playing suited hands, or when we are playing offsuit hands, we want to play connected offsuit hands when we are defending our small blind.
Okay.
So we are having a action here. Player in button min raised for 400. I called in on the small blind. That's great. I think that calling is going to be a good equity option here. And I think in this case, it's like, as long as you don't shove, as long as you don't shove or fold as first action, everything is fine. Like, doing a small 3-bet is fine. I think flat calling is still better.
Okay.
And as Kaleon added here, especially when BB is a good player, flat calling should be rarely preferred. Yep. Okay. Let's look at the situation. You flat called, then an opponent shoved turn. That's pretty much exactly what you wanted. But then we are having a random looking player to just flat call it.
Yes, the original opener just flatted it. Yeah.
I think that this is going to also be a situation where it differs a lot if we are facing a reg or if we are facing a random.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if we are facing a random, this kind of a crap is usually what I'm expecting. If we are facing a reg, then flat calls have quite often been that there's difference between regs, because there are a few regs that I have especially noted for doing a lot of just flat calling with medium strength hands. So it depends somewhat on the reg, but I think that this is in a way, this is polarized in a way that random players are usually, they're calling in this kind of situations to create I don't know if team play situation is a good word for here, but they are pretty aggressive in trying to eliminate the third player and wanting to see a flop with a weak to medium strength hand. But then on the other hand, when we are talking about regs, usually when they are having, it depends somewhat on regs, but most regs are usually they are having a trappy range when they are with these kind of stack sizes when they are just flat calling. And it makes sense since there are people that are, like if we are talking about random players, they are in those situations where you are just flat calling, the opponents are going to play with a wider range if you are flat calling than if you shove. So in a way, regs are playing in a way which abuses random players pretty well, which shouldn't be surprising. But like in this case, I wouldn't think twice with ace-jack off against a random player. I would shove it in, like we are risking really few chips here. And against a reg, I would hate this spot against a reg.
Okay.
And then it's like, if I have a note that the reg is doing a lot of this with medium strength hands, then I'm going all in. If I don't have the note, then I probably cry a bit inside and fold.
And this player here, if you look at his stats, he's kind of unknown. He's not reggy for you a bit from his dealing?
Like 67 hands only.
Yeah.
It depends a bit. Like, I think that you have played so many tournaments. I think that that's also something that deserves a bit of a clap here, since I think that you have done really nice volume playing mostly turbos during the last month. So like, I'm thinking that if you don't have a lot of hands on someone, it's going to likely be that the opponent is not a reg. Like, I think that you are having quite a good grasp on random players.
Okay.
But this is something to, like, this is a special case. I could, like, do the basic poker coach stuff and we can go through all of these and I can just answer, it depends on everything. Because these are so wide questions. Range suggestions / improvement for hijack and MP2 positions. Wondering if I should open hijack off for UTG 1 and 2 positions. I think in general, it's when you are playing solid post flop, I think that ace jack off is going to be a profitable open from any position.
Okay.
And what we have looked at, I think that there might be some range improvements for hijack and MP2. Like, we can play probably a bit more. But it's again like, when I'm looking at your stats, or what we looked at your stats, it's coming to be quite self-evident that it's going to be about looking through some hands and looking through some situations. Since, like, on average, your decision making seems to be, I'd say it seems to be quite good.
Okay.
Like, I think that you are having annoying ranges there if I would be your opponent on the tables, as we have sometimes been.
Yeah, just a few times.
Wondering if I should open more from cutoff position. And Caleon says that more common situations, yeah. But I think that in this case, like when it has been a small 3-bet, I think that with these situations we can have quite a good idea on like what kind of a situations usually are when there is a bigger stack. When there is a bigger stack or a smaller stack shoving and then a bigger stack flat calls, I think that the situation is close enough for us to think about the ranges. Wondering if I should open more from cutoff position. At least on hypers, your cutoff seemed to be pretty fine. And how range makeup should be versus different player types behind me. In cutoff, when there are 3 players behind you, it's like you are having the certain default range and then you are adjusting to it. Like if we are having 3 regs that are aggressive 3-betters, then when the stack size are getting lower, we are going to tighten our range up. If we are having 3 random players behind us, we are going to open more. So it's like doing small adjustments. But in general, your cutoff looks good.
Okay.
Often problematic to find right approach for bubbles. It depends.
Yeah, it's kind of a wide question.
Yeah, it really is.
Sorry for that.
Often not shoving enough and missing some spots, but on the other side sometimes shoving too wide and risking too much in thin values, but and getting called too wide by bad players. Seems to be hard to find the right balance. From my stats, I don't think I don't win enough big blinds per 100 on bubble compared to other situations. We don't need to win any big blinds per 100 on we don't need to win any big blinds per 100 on when it's the bubble going on. Nope, we need handed report. No. Okay, like if we are having something like 4 players per hand, we don't need to win any big blinds to make money. It's always good if we do, but it's going to be more about ICM here. I don't think that chips are going to be that valuable as a tool at that point. So, in a way, four-handed, it's what makes sit and goes a good game. Like, one of the most interesting situations in sit and goes is about finding the right balances in the bubbles. Like 5 to 3-handed is probably going to be the hardest in sit and goes compared to any other structure, since the situations that you are having there are going to be so wildly different. Like it's completely impossible to have just like one shove chart and I'll do with this, since you might be forced with the same effective stack size, you sometimes might be forced to play like 8% of your hands, and sometimes you're playing any 2 cards with the same exact stack size, which is quite nasty and makes it quite hard to think about it. But like what I said about the four-handed, if we are having opponents that are calling way too much, then it will be harder to win chips, but it should be easier to win ICM equity, because then you are also gaining ICM equity when the opponents are colliding against each other more widely than they should.
Doesn't it kind of balance out? Because I collide with them as well, I guess. Oftentimes.
Yeah, but you are adjusting to it when opponents are calling too much. You are adjusting to it by playing a tighter range. And when you are playing a tighter range, you are in general you are winning less chips. But you are playing the tighter range because you are thinking that even when I'm winning less chips at this point of the game, I'm winning more equity.
Okay.
Does it make sense? Like, if we are having the loser players, the worst calls they are making, I think that the less all-in adjusted big blinds per 100 we are making on the bubble. But I think that we are making more money in those kind of a bubbles.
Mm-hmm.
I might be wrong here, but this is what I think that it's going to. And we are going to think about the break quite soon. And I personally don't think that my three-handed play is not good enough. Same problem on what to shove and what to min raise, and how and what to three bet aggro stealer, and what to call in small blind, etc.
Yeah, it's a
Yep.
bit wide.
Yep, this is a bit wide.
Maybe we can skip that one.
Like, if we are talking about the three-handed play, we are thinking about that you need to first adjust to the four-handed bubble, that you need to tighten up a lot. But when we are thinking about the three-handed play, then it will be so top-heavy. So then we need to be focusing on more on gaining chips. And really good point for Calleon. Like, if villains are calling too wide, then it also begs to question if small ball lines are better. Like, will there be spots in four-handed that we would make more money if we are flat calling or min raising? Yeah, good point on Danita, that also those players won't shove enough against you, so you'll save chips when you don't have to fold as much. That's true as well.
Okay.
And Nikki Penisofani there is making fun of me using a lot of connecting words, but if there is a wide question, my basic reaction is that I want to give my brain a bit extra time to think about it. So it might be on, it depends, like always, maybe. Sorry about that. I usually try to be pretty to the point, but it's hard. But I think the three-handed play is probably something that I don't have a lot of hands, and I haven't looked through that as much on your games, but there might be something that you are going to give too much ICM respect when you are three-handed.
Mm-hmm. Could be.
Like, there would be opportunities to play wider than in general that I have seen. And also, when these questions are more abstract, then we are having less concrete stuff, but there is a lot of abstract and deep stuff, and I hope that this is helping you in how to think on some of the more abstract situations.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
This is less like buying fish from a store and more like we are going to the woods and we are using a knife and starting to do everything from the fishing pole onwards to get those fishes.
To some of those questions, there will be later some hands that could be a bit more concrete.
Yeah, I'm thinking here. So problem for me sometimes 3-bet from small blind when 3-stack non-all-in 3-bet seems that I put a ton of my stack in the middle. I think that in here we can use smaller raise sizing, and get a lot of 4-bet shoves. If you are thinking that you are getting a lot of 4-bet shoves, then you'll need to look at your data. Like, what does your data say? How often you are successful in doing small 3-bets from small blinds when you are deep stacked? How often you are really going to get 4-bet? What kind of a range you are getting 4-bet with? Or like, are you 3-betting the right positions? What are their ranges?
Okay.
And problem is also that range and frequency versus certain players, like aggro regs who fold to 3-bets a lot according to stat and open a lot. So if we are having a player that raises a lot and folds to 3-bets a lot, then we want to build our 3-betting range to include a lot of 3-bet bluffs, right?
Yes.
And we usually then we want to play our more value heavy hands. We want to play with calls, since we want to get value out of his weaker ranges. So it's a spot where we want to then manipulate our ranges to in a way make our calling ranges stronger, and then our 3-betting range doesn't need to be that strong, since the main function of the 3-betting range will be to be a bluff.
But when we say we include bluffs, don't we have to have some kind of frequency? How often we bluff? I mean, we can bluff with every hand basically, every trash hand we get. And
If
every
our
time when
opponents
he
are
opens.
if our opponents are folding a ton of their hands, like if they are folding something like 75% when they're deep stacked, if they are folding 75% to re-steals, we pretty much will print money if we 3-bet everything, but I wouldn't recommend it still. It's even if you are having a player that's folding way too much, it's still probably we want to have some playability, and there's also going to be the possibility that big blind has a great hand. So in general, we would want to have some playability in as well. But that's pretty much if we are having like opponent that folds 75 to 80%, then we can pretty easily see that if we are opening 3x his raise, there are antes involved, we are pretty much making chips every time we are 3-betting, and then it makes more sense to 3-bet the weaker hands and flat call the hands that are flopping well, and 3-bet the hands that we are having, or flat the hands that we are having good equity on our opponent.
Okay.
And Caleon said that it can also be better to use more actual 3-bet bluffs from bottom compared to small blind, as calling from out of position will be a tougher option for ready players. That's true as well. And still, if we are having an opponent that's betting way too much and folding a lot to 3-bets, then I think that we can also then I think that we can 3-bet bluff or quite a sizable amount from small blind as well.
Okay.
And some regs have a smaller 3-bet size, but I'm not a fan of getting more calls and being out of position post flop. Yeah, me neither, but it's going to be always about finding a balance on where you are getting enough folds.
Like what sizing would you recommend from small blind?
As I have said that 3 times the amount that we have raised, I think that's going to be to be quite close, but I think that it's a discussion like painting the shed. Everyone will have their opinion about the color, and it doesn't matter that much. Like if we are doing 2.75, 3, 3.25, 3.5, I don't think that that's not going to be the main point.
Okay.
that the main point is going to be on like how we are building our ranges depending on, and of course like if we are having an opponent that raises a lot and calls a lot or like almost never folds, then we are playing with, then we are creating a 3-bet range that is only a value hand or consists only on value hands. But like we should be thinking about that we are doing a basic range, and I think the basic range that we are doing is going to be tighter and doesn't consist of that many 3-bet bluffs from the small blind, since opponents in general are not opening wide enough. So if we are having a really aggressive opponent, then we know like how we play against him. But in general, I think from small blind, our 3-betting range is going to be quite value filled, since opponents are opening tighter than opening tighter and probably calling a bit too much early on.
Okay.
There's a question for you on Twitch chat.
How old I am? Well, I would rather not disclose it.
Rather not disclose it.
Yes.
Yep. So now we can imagine everything from just turning 18 and being legally playing from Germany to something like Gandalf from the Alps and everything in between.
And I could also be younger and illegally playing. Technically.
Technically, yeah.
Yes.
But you shouldn't do it, because that's bad, and that's something that can make your, like, this is going to be a discussion, but usually I don't think that the risk to reward ratio of playing poker when you are underage is going to be worth it. Like, if you are getting caught with it, you are most likely you are going to lose the money you have won, and it's like then the site has been free rolling you, since they can like deny your winnings, but if you lose, then it's really hard to get it back to say that like I lied my age and I was underage and I shouldn't have been playing it.
Mm-hmm.
And like, I'm not sure what to 3-bet, what to call. It's in general that in small blind, if our reasoning is that if you are a bit too tight, it usually isn't going to be a huge problem. Small blind is a damn hard spot to play well. Your position is the weakest, you are forced to put money in, and the big blind can make your life a living hell. So there is not a lot that we can call, and against players that are abusing their late positions we can raise a lot, but against general players our general range should be more value filled.
Okay.
Common problem spot for me is pre-bubble. 5 to 6-handed, sometimes 7-handed, when we're around 10 tournament big blinds and below in BB, reg in button or cutoff, the same stacks as bigger, slightly smaller, 1 or 2 shorter stack than us, and reg min raises into me. I have a problem in this spot to 3-bet, and I often go with a flat call instead, because I'm afraid of the bubble factor and trap range, and to bust in pre-bubble while being in good position in the tournament.
We have some example hands for that later on, so that it's not so abstract.
Yeah, like it's, and same goes for small blind steals by reg in same situation. Go for much more flats than 3-bet shoves. First of all, when we are playing against small blind on the big blind, and the stack size are really low, we want to go for way more flats than 3-bets. That's usually the place where we can expand our range. And like if we are 3-bet shoving, then we are throwing away our positional advantage. Like if we are flat calling, then we are having positional advantage, and that can be, and that has a worth as well. But for button or cutoff, the same stacks are slightly more. It depends on the reg. Like if the reg is opening way too much, then we can 3-bet a bit more. If the reg is opening to a few hands and mainly traps, then our range to play back at him will be really tight. And it might be a good idea to go for a flat call. Usually just flat calling a button or cutoff isn't going to be that much fun from the big blind, since we are going to be out of position. We are getting great pot odds though, so it's going to be a harder balance situation. Like even against guys that are trapping a lot, there are going to be plenty of hands that are still going to be profitable to flat. Remember the break, yeah, we are like going through 2 out of 9 pages, and we are like 120 already. But I think that we are going for this final stuff in here. Like often not sure what to call and what to shove versus aggressive reg stealer when in big blind in different tournament stages.
That's, I think, a bit too wide a question.
And if player open like 80% according to stats, say from small blind, I have about around 10 big blinds or more, and had like check them off, is it better to shove or call, and does it make a difference if we are 500 or 900, how our range should change? If we are like 5 to 9, or if we are 5-handed, we can usually pressure our opponent a bit. Like on 5-handed, there are spots where we can add a lot more pressure on our opponent. And it's also like if we are talking about tournament big blinds, we are going to have slightly bigger stack in big blinds when we are 5-handed than when we are 9-handed. But something like Jack 10 off, I think that that's a good hand that you have taken there. I think that it's generally a hand that would probably play better as a flat, but it can be 3-bet as well. It depends. That's also something that I think that in general we are making ourselves way harder to play against. If for a small blind player, if we are playing a wider range against them and using more flats.
Okay.
But if there are people that are opening like 80% according to stats, I think that something like Jack 10 off is going to be quite easy to like get used that it's going to be a profitable hand to play no matter what. Like I think it's going to be profitable to now my head is spinning empty. It's going to be profitable to 3-bet shove for sure. That's quite easily mathematically findable, but I'd say that also flat calling will be. Like when we are having position, we are having great hand, and we are requiring something like 22% of equity. It's going to be like, it's almost impossible not to make money by flat calling with Jack 10 off. And I think that that's also something that when we are flat calling, we are getting eliminated less often from the tournament, and that's going to also be good for. Then we are having more future game situations. Like if we are having 2 different options that are having the equal equity gains, we should always select the option that we are risking our survival less.
Okay.
And right now I think that it's going to be a good time to take a break. I think that right now we could actually take a slightly longer break, like 10-minute break.
Okay.
So we'll be back at 35 past with Neo. So let's go to a break, and there will be probably a lot of wide questions for sit and goes still to go.